Thanksgiving morning always smells like onions, even when no one is cooking them yet. I woke at 6:12 a.m. out of habit. The house still dark, the thermostat blinking 68 degrees Fahrenheit because I refused to let it creep higher before November was officially done. Margaret used to fight me on that. She said warmth was a form of mercy. I said mercy was overrated when the gas bill came. I shuffled into the kitchen in my socks and put the kettle on. The stove clicked twice before the flame caught. Same as always. I sliced half an onion, wrapped the rest in wax paper, and set it back in the fridge next to the celery I might not use. You prepare, anyway. That's what people like me do. We prepare even when there's no audience. The turkey had been defrosting since Tuesday. 14 pounds. Too much for one man. But I had bought it before the silence started. Before the pauses in text messages grew longer than the messages themselves. Before the phrase "we'll see" began to mean no. At 7:03 a.m., my phone buzzed. Daughter-in-law, running behind today. Might start without you if traffic's bad. Traffic. On Thanksgiving. At 7 in the morning. I stared at the screen long enough for it to dim. Then I replied with a thumbs up emoji. It felt appropriate. Small, non-confrontational, almost cheerful. Margaret would have raised an eyebrow at that. She believed punctuation revealed character. Emojis would have horrified her. I showered, shaved carefully, nicked my chin just enough to bleed, and pressed a square of toilet paper there, like a flag of surrender. I put on the navy sweater she bought me 3 winters ago. The good one. The one she said made me look less like a man waiting to be excused. At 9:18, another message. Son, hey Dad. We already sat down. Kids were melting down. You understand. I did understand. That was the problem. I stood in the living room holding my coat, the sleeve half on, the other dangling. The television was on mute, a parade rerun flashing floats I didn't recognize. The clock over the fireplace ticked loud enough to feel accusatory. Already sat down. I took the coat off and hung it back in the closet. I didn't respond. Silence, I've learned, is sometimes the only sentence that doesn't get edited later. At 10:02, I turned the oven on anyway. 325 degrees Fahrenheit. Old habits are stubborn. I seasoned the turkey with salt, pepper, and the last of the rosemary from the garden. Dried and brittle but still fragrant if you crushed it between your fingers and tried hard enough to remember. As the oven warmed, I sat at the kitchen table and opened my laptop. The bank's website loaded slowly. It always does on holidays, like it knows better than to rush. I didn't go there to cancel anything. Not yet. I went there because the quiet had finally given me room to think. Margaret died on a Wednesday in April 3 years ago. Lung cancer. Efficient. She left behind her teacups, her handwriting on recipe cards, and a life that kept asking me to authorize things in her absence. At first it was small. Utility bills she used to handle, passwords written on slips of paper. Then it grew. College savings top-ups, temporary help with dues, flights booked on my card because you get the miles anyway. The country club had been the biggest one, $3,850 a month. Auto pay. I set it up when the grandkids were little, and the pool felt like a way to buy time I wasn't getting naturally anymore. No fuss, no reminders, just a clean withdrawal on the first of every month, like gravity. I watched the turkey through the oven glass. Its skin slowly tightened, the butter beginning to sizzle and run. The kitchen filled with a smell that made the house feel occupied again, even if it wasn't. At 11:47, my phone buzzed one last time. Son, we'll bring you a plate later. Later. I laughed then. A short sound, surprised out of me. The kind of laugh that happens when the math finally balances and you don't like the answer. I sat down, ate a piece of toast over the sink, and wiped the crumbs with the side of my hand. The turkey would be ready in a few hours. I would eat it quietly. I would put the leftovers in labeled containers like I always did. And when the oven timer went off, I would do one more small thing. Not out of anger, out of accuracy. Because something had shifted that morning, right there, between already sat down and later. And I wasn't interested in paying for it anymore. If you believe older voices still matter, support this channel with a like and a subscription. People like to pretend money leaves a paper trail you can follow cleanly, like breadcrumbs. It doesn't. It leaves impressions instead, indentations. Small absences you don't notice until you stop assuming the floor is solid. I didn't think about the country club much after Margaret died. That was my first mistake. The place had never been mine, really, not in the way a workshop or a kitchen is yours. It was something I paid for so others could feel comfortable. A neutral zone with clean linens and staff trained to look past awkward silences. I told myself it was for the kids. That was easier than admitting it was for my son. The club sat on the north end of town, all trimmed hedges and valets who remembered faces better than names. Initiation fee, $62,000, paid in full in May 2014, 3 weeks after my son's second layoff scare. Monthly dues started at $2,900, crept up to $3,850 by 2021, and never stopped climbing. There were assessments too, capital improvements, pool resurfacing, dining room renovation. Each one explained politely, invoiced precisely. Auto pay made it painless. Or so I thought. I remembered the afternoon I set it up. Margaret was still alive then, sitting at the kitchen counter with a bowl of cut apples, watching me squint at the screen. "You don't even play golf," she'd said. "I don't need to," I replied. "They do." She didn't argue. Margaret rarely did when she sensed my mind was already made up. She just slid the bowl closer to me and said, "Just don't let it become invisible." It became invisible. The charges showed up on the first of every month like clockwork. Whitmore Country Club, ACH debit. Clean. Predictable. I treated it like property tax or insurance. Something you didn't touch unless something went wrong. And nothing ever seemed to go wrong. Thanksgiving dinners there. Easter brunch. Sunday lunches where my son talked about work between bites of steak he didn't pay for. His wife critiqued the service. And the kids grew up assuming that adults existed to make sure forks arrived warm. I paid. Quietly. When Margaret got sick, I paid louder things: hospital parking, private rooms, medications insurance refused to dignify. The club bill faded into background noise. Compared to oncology, it was trivial. After the funeral, my son took over Thanksgiving. "You shouldn't be alone," he said. "Let us handle it." I let him. That's how the shift happened. Not with a shove, but with a hand offered that never let go. In December of the first year, without Margaret, the club charged an extra $18,400. I noticed that one. I called the billing office and waited on hold, listening to instrumental jazz that had been carefully stripped of anything resembling emotion. When a woman finally picked up, she sounded young and apologetic. "That's the annual minimum spend adjustment," she explained. "Your account didn't meet dining requirements." "I don't dine there," I said. "Yes, sir," she replied gently. "But the membership does." The membership. I paid it. Of course I did. That same month, my son asked if I could cover the kids' winter camp fees. "Just until my bonus clears," he said. $7,200. Venmo. Immediate. I didn't connect the dots. I wasn't looking for a picture yet. Over the next 2 years, there were more things like that. Smaller. Slipperier. Club pro shop charges I didn't recognize. Guest passes on weekends I wasn't invited to. A wine locker fee $3, $600 annually for wine I never drank. Each time I noticed, I told myself there was an explanation. There always is if you don't ask. It wasn't until that Thanksgiving morning with the turkey roasting and my phone face down on the counter that I finally logged into the club account directly. Not through the summary email. Not through my bank. The account itself. The login still worked. Of course it did. I was the primary member. I always had been. The screen loaded slowly, then presented me with a list. Dining charges, events, guest privileges, equipment rentals. Dates jumped out at me. July 4th, $2,140. August 16th, $1,870. September 3rd, $2,450. All weekends I'd spent alone, grilling chicken, watching baseball on mute, wondering why no one needed me. There was even a charge from 2 weeks earlier. Sunday brunch, party of 6, $612. I scrolled until my fingers ached. The realization didn't arrive as rage. It arrived as order. This was not generosity anymore. This was infrastructure. I was not being included. I was being used. The oven timer chimed. I stood up, turned it off, and let the turkey rest. Outside, a car passed slowly, loaded with people going somewhere together. I returned to the table, opened my laptop again, and clicked into my bank's auto-pay section. Whitmore Country Club was right there. Next withdrawal scheduled, December 1st, $3,850. I hovered over the button. Not yet. First, I wanted to finish my meal. Because for the first time in a long while, I understood exactly what I was paying for. And I was done pretending it tasted like family. I carved the turkey at noon. That detail matters to me, though I doubt it would matter to anyone else. Noon was when Margaret and I used to sit down, even when guests arrived late. Food waits for no one, she'd say, half joking, half daring anyone to argue. No one ever did. I sliced carefully, breast first, clean strokes. The knife had been sharpened last week, out of habit, not anticipation. Steam rose, carrying a smell that filled the kitchen too quickly, like it was trying to replace something. I put a single plate together, white meat, a spoon of stuffing, cranberry sauce from a jar, because I never liked pretending to enjoy the real kind. I ate standing up, leaning against the counter, listening to the refrigerator kick on and off. The phone stayed face down. After I washed the plate and wrapped the leftovers, I sat back at the table and opened the laptop again. The bank page remembered me. It always does. Loyalty, even for machines, can feel accusatory. I didn't rush. I clicked into auto-pay and subscriptions and scrolled slowly, reading each line like a confession. Electric, water, internet, streaming services I'd forgotten I had. Then there it was. Whitmore Country Club. Amount, $3,850. Frequency, monthly. Next withdrawal, December 1st. Below it, smaller text. Active since March 2016. Active. I clicked into the details. The page expanded, revealing the history I'd never bothered to look at all at once. Initiation fee, $62,000, paid May 12, 2014. Annual assessments, 2015 to 2024, $184,700. Dining minimum penalties, $41,300. Miscellaneous charges, events, guests, pro shop, $96,540. I did the math twice, because denial is stubborn. Total, $384,540. That number sat there without commentary. No judgment. No explanation. Just a fact. Almost $400,000 to belong to a place where I hadn't eaten a proper meal in years. I closed the laptop and went into the living room. The TV was still on mute. A football game now. People celebrating something together. Arms slung around shoulders that expected to be there. At 1:37 p.m., my phone buzzed again. Son, kids are asking if you're okay. I typed back, I'm fine, which was true, in the narrowest sense of the word. At 2:11, another message. Daughter-in-law. We'll swing by around 5 with leftovers. I imagined them standing in my driveway, plastic containers in hand, performing generosity like a civic duty. I imagined thanking them. I imagined lying. I didn't reply. Instead, I went back to the laptop. I clicked Edit Subscription. The screen asked me to confirm. A polite box appeared, blue and calm, as if nothing important were happening. Are you sure you want to cancel this auto payment? I hovered the cursor. Not because I doubted the decision, because I wanted to remember the feeling before it. The years of saying yes without being asked. The quiet pride of being useful. The convenience of being generous when generosity was never tested. Then I click confirm. The page refreshed. Status canceled. No fireworks. No alarms. Just absence. At 2:14 p.m., my phone rang. I didn't answer. At 2:15, it rang again. This time I did. What did you just do? My son asked, skipping every pretense. I canceled an autopay, I said. You can't just... I can, I replied. I did. There was noise on his end. Dishes. Voices. Someone laughing too loudly. That account is tied to our membership, he said. The kids are not members, I interrupted. I am. A pause. You embarrassed us, he said. I almost smiled. At the club, he continued. They pulled us aside, in front of people. I imagined that was uncomfortable. You've never cared about appearances, he snapped. That's not true, I said. I just stopped paying for yours. His wife's voice cut in, sharp and breathless. This is petty. No, I said. This is arithmetic. There it was then. The edge. The thing they'd avoided naming. You're punishing us for Thanksgiving, my son said. I'm responding to it, I replied. Silence. Then something colder. You wouldn't survive on your own social circle, he said. You don't even have friends there. I never did, I said. That was your benefit. The line went dead. At 4:03 p.m., an email arrived from club. Subject, urgent. Account status update. They were very polite. They always are when money changes its mind. I read it once and closed the laptop. At 5:12, headlights swept across my living room walls. A knock followed. I didn't answer. The knock came again, louder this time. I stayed seated. Eventually, the lights moved away. The house grew quiet again, but it was a different kind of quiet now. Not absence, completion. I wrapped the leftover turkey and labeled the container with the date, even though I knew exactly when it was. Some habits are worth keeping. Others are worth canceling. And as the afternoon faded into evening, I realized that this small, precise act was only the beginning. Because when you stop paying for comfort, people are forced to tell you what they really think you're worth. And I was finally ready to listen. The club didn't waste time. By Monday morning, 3 emails had arrived, each more urgent than the last. The tone shifted quickly, like someone realizing politeness was no longer a currency I accepted. We noticed an interruption in your payment method. Please contact billing to avoid service disruption. Your account is currently under review. Under review. That phrase always amused me. It suggested thoughtfulness where there was only policy. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table. The turkey now fully portioned and stacked neatly in the freezer. The labels faced outward. Organization has always been my answer to uncertainty. If you can't control the outcome, you can at least control the drawers. At 9:41 a.m., the phone rang. This time it wasn't my son. Mr. Whitmore, a man asked, voice smooth and practiced. This is Alan from Whitmore Country Club Member Services. I appreciated the irony. Same last name. No relation. He had probably said it 100 times before, never considering how it landed. Yes, I said. We're calling regarding your recent cancellation of the automatic draft. I know why you're calling, I replied. A pause. Paper shuffling. He was smiling, I could tell. They always smile when they think they're still in control. As you know, your family has an active membership, he began. I have an active membership? I corrected. Singular. Another pause. Your son and his family are listed as authorized users. Authorized by me, I said. Previously. Sir, there are outstanding charges. There always are, I said calmly. That's the business model. His tone tightened. If payment isn't restored, access privileges will be suspended immediately. Understand, I said. Please proceed. Silence. Then a careful attempt at reason. You've been a valued member for over a decade. I've been a paying one, I replied. There's a difference. The call ended shortly after. At 11:26 a.m., my son called again. I let it ring twice. Not out of cruelty. Out of habit. I've always believed you should give people time to choose their words. You humiliated us, he said as soon as I answered. I declined to continue paying, I replied. Those are not the same thing. They shut off our access, he snapped. In front of people. The kids were standing there. I pictured it. The valet desk. The murmured apologies. The way staff lowers their voices when status changes hands. I'm sorry the children were embarrassed, I said. They shouldn't have been there. You did this on purpose. No, I said. I did this accurately. His wife came on the line then. She didn't bother masking her anger. You're being vindictive, she said, after everything we've done for you. I waited. Like what? I asked. She inhaled sharply, as if the answer were obvious, as if gratitude were a standing charge. You had holidays. A place to go. I paid for those, I said. Every single one. That doesn't mean you get to take it away. That's exactly what it means. The line went quiet. Then my son spoke again, slower now. You don't understand how things work, he said. People will talk. They already have, I replied. Just not to me. At 1:03 p.m., the club sent a formal notice. Outstanding balance. $9,742. Due immediately to avoid collections. I laughed when I saw the breakdown. Brunch, guest fees, wine service, an event titled Friendsgiving Mixer. Friendsgiving. I forwarded the email to my son without comment. At 1:17, he replied, "You're going to ruin us over this?" I typed back slowly, "I'm not ruining anything. I'm stopping." That afternoon, I pulled out a folder I hadn't opened in years. Estate documents, trust language, the things you set up when you assume people will behave themselves. Margaret's handwriting was still on the inside cover. A grocery list of all things. She'd used the folder as a surface once and never erased it. Milk, apples, check fire alarm batteries. I sat there longer than necessary. Then called the attorney, whose name sat neatly printed on the first page. We spoke briefly, efficiently. "Yes," he said. "You can do that." "Yes," he said again. "You probably should have sooner." By evening, the house felt smaller, but not tighter. More intentional, like a place where nothing extra was being stored just in case someone else needed it. At 6:48 p.m., the doorbell rang. I didn't move. At 6:52, my phone buzzed. "Son, please. Let's talk." I looked at the message, then at the chair across from me, the empty one Margaret used to occupy, the one no one else ever sat in without permission. I typed back, "We already are." Outside, a car started, pulled away. I turned off the lights one by one and went upstairs. That night, I slept deeply for the first time since Thanksgiving, not because things were resolved, but because they were finally being counted correctly. And when you stop subsidizing other people's comfort, you learn very quickly who was dining with you and who was only eating because you were paying the bill. The consequences arrived in layers. First embarrassment, then anger, then the quiet realization that something essential had been built on money that was no longer moving. On Wednesday morning, the club sent another email, shorter this time, stripped of pleasantries. Access suspended pending payment. Account subject to review for termination. Termination, such a clean word for exile. I printed it out and slid it into the folder with the rest. Not because I needed a record, but because I wanted to see it later, when memory inevitably softened the edges. Paper doesn't soften. At 10:14 a.m., my son showed up, not at the door, in the driveway. I saw him through the living room window, pacing near his car. Phone pressed his ear. He looked older than he had a week ago. Not wiser, just exposed. I waited until he rang the bell. Once, twice. On the third ring, I opened the door. We stood there for a moment, the air between us carrying the faint smell of rain and impatience. "You couldn't just answer the phone," he said. "You're here now," I replied. He stepped inside without waiting to be invited. That used to be normal. Today it wasn't. The house seemed to notice. He looked around like someone taking inventory after a fire. The dining table cleared. The chairs pushed in. No evidence of a meal shared or planned. "You didn't even come," he said. "On Thanksgiving." "You told me not to," I replied. "That's not what I said." He said, "You already sat down." He exhaled sharply and ran a hand through his hair. "You're blowing this out of proportion." I walked into the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. I didn't offer him one. "Sit," I said. He didn't. "You know what happens if that membership is terminated?" he asked. "We lose our sponsor privileges. The kids' swim team, the dining credits, everything." "Yes," I said. "You lose what I was paying for." "You were happy to pay for it before," he said. "That was before I knew I was invisible." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "This is about Thanksgiving," he said. "One meal?" "This is about 10 years," I replied. "Thanksgiving was just when I noticed." He leaned against the counter, arms crossed, adopting a posture he used when negotiating, the one that assumed reason would bend. "You don't understand the pressure we're under," he said. "Appearances matter. The club matters. People notice when you disappear." "I disappeared a long time ago," I said. "You just didn't notice because the checks kept clearing." His face hardened. "So what?" he said. "This is punishment." "No," I said. "This is separation." He shook his head. "You think this makes you principled?" he asked. "You're just bitter. Alone. You want us to suffer because you are." There it was. Not disappointment. Not confusion. Resentment. I looked at him carefully then. Really looked. The tailored jacket. The watch I'd helped him buy when his first bonus came through. The confidence That assumed rescue was always a phone call away. You don't miss me, I said. You miss the structure. He didn't deny it. You can still fix this, he said finally. Just turn it back on. Auto pay. We'll talk later. Later. Again. No, I said. He straightened, eyes narrowing. Then you're cutting us off. I'm cutting myself free, I replied. He laughed again, sharp and brittle. You think this ends here, he said. You think this doesn't have consequences? I know it does, I said. I'm finally willing to live with them. He stared at me for a long moment, searching for hesitation. He didn't find it. Without another word, he turned and walked out. His car backed out of the driveway too fast. That afternoon, I received a call from the club's legal department. They wanted to discuss outstanding balances, obligations, policies. I listened politely, then said, send it in writing. They did. The total $27 for 30. Covered charges incurred after Thanksgiving. Charges I hadn't authorized. Charges made under an assumption that had finally expired. I forwarded the letter to my attorney. He called me an hour later. This is clean, he said. You're not liable. Good, I replied. By Friday, the club had formally terminated the membership. No ceremony, no refund of the initiation fee. Just a final statement and a courteous goodbye. I felt nothing reading it. Saturday morning, I donated the old club jackets to a shelter. Navy blue, crest stitched on the breast pocket. Symbols, once expensive, now irrelevant. That evening, I cooked dinner for one again. Pasta, garlic, olive oil, simple. As I ate, I realized something that surprised me. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger requires investment. It assumes a future conversation. This had become something else. Accounting. And for the first time since Margaret died, the ledger felt honest. I washed my plate, dried it, and set it back in the cabinet. One place setting. Enough. Because when you stop paying admission to rooms where you're not respected, you discover something quietly liberating. You don't actually need a seat at their table. You just need to stop funding it. The silence after a cutoff is not empty. It's busy. It hums with things recalibrating. The week after the membership termination, my phone stayed quiet in a way that felt intentional, as if the world were waiting to see whether I would blink. I didn't. I kept to my routines. Coffee at 6, walk around the block at 8. Groceries on Wednesday, laundry on Saturday. Structure is a kind of dignity when everything else is being renegotiated. On Tuesday, an envelope arrived by courier. Cream paper, thick, the kind of envelope that assumes importance before it earns it. Inside was a letter from the club's attorney. 3 pages, dense, courteous to the point of menace. They acknowledged the termination and asserted a remaining obligation tied to ancillary privileges extended to authorized users. The amount was listed plainly at the end, $58,600. I read it twice, then a third time, slower, the way you read instructions before assembling something that can fall apart if you rush. Ancillary privileges. That was a new phrase, creative even. It attempted to reframe generosity as liability. I called my attorney and left a message. Then I made a sandwich, turkey ironically, mustard, pickles. I ate it standing up, looking out the kitchen window, waiting for the call back. When it came, it was brief. They're trying, he said. They know you're done paying. This is the last reach. What do we do? We respond, firmly, and we attach documentation. I knew what documentation he meant. The account logs, the authorization history, the dates I wasn't present, the emails acknowledging that charges were incurred by others. The paper trail money leaves when you finally decide to follow it. That afternoon, I pulled everything together. Printed statements, screenshots, notes I'd started keeping without realizing it, dates, times, messages. The discipline of record keeping had returned to me the way muscle memory does after a long break. Margaret would have been pleased. She loved a good folder. By Thursday, the response had been sent. By Friday, the club went quiet. Not apologetic quiet, strategic quiet. That same Friday evening, my daughter-in-law called. Not my son, her. I'm not calling to fight, she said quickly, as if that were something she deserved credit for. I just want you to understand what this has done to us. I listened. She talked about the kids. the swim team, the awkwardness, the looks, the sense of being other now. She said the word community 3 times. When she paused, I spoke. You built a community that required my monthly approval, I said. That's not community. That's dependency. That's not fair. No, I said. It's accurate. She sighed. You could have handled this differently. I did, I replied. For years. She didn't argue with that. Instead, she tried something else. He's struggling, she said. Your son. This has hit him hard. I thought of the driveway, the pacing, the assumption that I would fold. I know, I said. Doesn't that matter? It matters, I replied. It just doesn't change the math. We ended the call politely, cordially, like people concluding a business meeting where nothing more can be negotiated. On Sunday morning, I went to the grocery store early. Fewer people, less noise. I stood in front of the bread aisle longer than necessary, comparing prices I could easily afford. Choice is a strange thing. When it's returned to you after a long absence, you don't rush it. At the register, the cashier asked if I wanted to donate $1 to some cause. I said yes, without thinking. Then I caught myself and smiled. I was choosing again. That was the difference. The following week, a notice arrived from a club. Balance resolved. No further action required. No apology. No admission. Just closure, framed as efficiency. I filed it away and felt the smallest flicker of satisfaction. Not triumph, not revenge. Just confirmation that the ground I was standing on could hold my weight. My son did not contact me after that. Instead, I heard about him through the soft static of mutual acquaintances. New routines, adjustments, a different swim program, a different school fundraiser, the quiet embarrassment of recalibration. I didn't take pleasure in it. I took responsibility. One evening, while sorting through a drawer, I found the old club card. Plastic, heavy. My name embossed in gold. It had once felt like access. Now it felt like a receipt. I cut it in half and threw away, not ceremonially, casually, like something that had served its purpose and overstayed. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea and realized something else. I had been confusing generosity with relevance. As long as I paid, I mattered. As long as I covered gaps, I was included. As long as the auto pay ran, my presence was implied. But relevance that depends on withdrawal schedules isn't relevance at all. It's rent. And I had moved out. The house was quiet again, but not hollow. The refrigerator hummed. The clock ticked. The systems I controlled responded as expected. I finished my tea and turned off the light. There was nothing left to cancel. Only the rest of my life to live without a monthly reminder of who I was supposed to be funding. And that felt, finally, like a holiday worth keeping. The first Thanksgiving after everything happened passed without ceremony. No turkey. No table set for more than one. Just a quiet morning, a bowl of oatmeal, and the sound of rain tapping the kitchen window with no particular urgency. I noticed the date only because the grocery store flyer still insisted on calling it a holiday. I didn't feel bitter about that. I felt accurate. Accuracy has become my preferred emotion. It doesn't exaggerate. It doesn't beg. It simply stands where it is and refuses to move for anyone else's comfort. In December, a small envelope arrived from a club. Not legal, not threatening, administrative. They had calculated a partial refund for unused dining credits. $4,280.17. The check was enclosed, printed on paper thick enough to feel intentional. I endorsed it, deposited it, and used the money to replace the aging refrigerator that had been rattling for years. Stainless steel, quiet, efficient. It closed with a soft seal that sounded like something being settled. That felt appropriate. I didn't hear from my son again until February. Not a call, not a message, a forwarded email sent by mistake or impulse. I never found out which. It was addressed to a school administrator, requesting an extension on tuition payments. The tone was polite, careful, familiar, the same tone he'd used with me for years, minus the affection. I didn't reply. I didn't forward it back. I deleted it. Some requests expire the moment they reach the wrong inbox. Spring came slowly. I planted tomatoes in the backyard even though I live alone and don't particularly enjoy them. They give structure to a season, something to check on each morning, Something that grows whether or not anyone is watching. Neighbors stop to talk sometimes. Nothing heavy. Weather. Gas prices. The way time slips when you stop measuring it against other people's schedules. One afternoon, I ran into my son at the hardware store. Not planned. Not dramatic. We recognized each other in the same aisle, both holding different versions of the same thing, light bulbs. Utility has a way of leveling people. He looked thinner, not ruined, just adjusted. "Dad," he said. "Hello," I replied. We stood there, surrounded by shelves of things meant to be replaced. "How are you?" he asked. "Fine," I said. "And meant it?" He nodded, looked at the bulbs in his hand like they might offer guidance. "We're figuring things out," he said. "I imagine you are." A pause. Not hostile, just unfamiliar. "I never meant to shut you out," he said quietly. "I know," I replied. "You just didn't notice when it happened." He swallowed, then nodded once. "Take care," he said. "You too." We walked in opposite directions. No reconciliation. No apology worth framing. Just two adults acknowledging the limit of what could still be adjusted. At home that evening, I made dinner and ate at the table instead of standing. A small upgrade. I poured myself a glass of wine I'd been saving without a reason. It tasted fine. Not celebratory. Not sad. Just present. I thought about Margaret then. About how she used to say that love without boundaries becomes habit. And habit without gratitude becomes entitlement. I hadn't listened closely enough at the time, but I had learned. The money mattered, of course. Nearly $400,000 over a decade is not abstract. It's time. It's choice. It's life redirected quietly while you're busy believing you're being kind. But the money wasn't the inheritance. The inheritance was the moment I stopped paying to be tolerated. I stopped confusing access with affection. Stopped mistaking convenience for care. Stopped underwriting a version of family that only functioned when I stayed invisible and solvent. On the first of the month, now my bank account stays still. No large withdrawals. No silent agreements renewing themselves. Just numbers that reflect decisions I actually made. That calm is worth more than any club membership. On the next Thanksgiving, I roasted a chicken instead of a turkey. Smaller. Honest. I ate it slowly at noon, like Margaret used to insist. I saved the bones for soup and labeled the container with the date. Outside, a car passed, full of people going somewhere together. I wished them well. Then I turned off the oven, washed my plate, and sat in the quiet I had finally earned. Because some people inherit houses. Some inherit money. Some inherit expectations they never agreed to. What I kept was simpler and harder to take away. My time, my boundaries, and the clear, steady knowledge that I no longer owed anyone a seat at a table I was only invited to finance. That was my Thanksgiving, and for the first time in years it was enough.